What we have here is a review of The Other Side of the Wind. It's the Orson Welles Last Movie. He filmed it in the 1970s. It's basically a time capsule from the 1970s. Sat in a vault for almost 4 decades. Finally, they were able to clear up all the legal hurdles and obstacles, and they got this thing filmed. Netflix has just released it about a week ago. And now we're going to have a review. I'm going to talk about it. Let's face it, Orson Welles was bigger than life. He came across the screen in magical ways that few understand. And that's why we're talking about his last 100 hours of film. He truly was a magician. First and foremost, a showman. That's what he was. Here he is with his famous levitating lady magical trick, magician. It's just an illusion. That's what Orson Welles was. He was the master of illusion. Now, but that was in his early years. And of course, this is his last 100 hours of filmography that we are about to critique. And then I asked myself, who are we to critique such a legendary master showman such as Welles? I will tell you this, though. I think the reviews are mostly good. And I think that has to do with that Hollywood is in such sad shape. Hollywood has gone down so much that this movie, The Other Side of the Wind, it's getting good reviews, even though it pales in comparison to the great movies of long ago. And I think the good reviews are nothing more than a nostalgia bow of respect to the great master of the 1940s and 50s filmography. Now, if you are a student of storytelling, this film is for you. It is a good film for anybody who knows how the inner workings work, a student of filmography, if you will. But if you don't understand how movies are made, you just are not going to enjoy this one. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say your mother, your wife, your sister, your girlfriend, maybe anyone under 40 probably won't like it. They're not going to understand it. But here's the bottom line about this film. The bottom line is this. This film is nothing more than Orson Welles mocking Hollywood. It's his way of mocking Hollywood, making fun of its dark side. It's a riddle, it's a puzzle, it's a montage of film clips that Orson was to use like one of his magic tricks. You've seen this. I've showed it to you before. I'll show it to you again. Orson Welles and the levitating lady. Everything was a magical trick to Orson, an illusion to make you think something. It's not really there. So, in this film, the film that we're about ready to review, Orson Welles is levitating his reputation. One last hurrah! One last poke at the town that made him and the town that broke him. Yes, when it comes right down to it, this is Orson Welles mocking, jabbing, and poking one last wild punch from left field, hoping to connect to the jaw of Hollywood. Sorry to say it was 40 years too late for the old man. What's the nitty-gritty here? Was it a great movie? No. Was it a glimpse into the 1970s sick Hollywood? Yes, by an insider, no less. Was there a great scene in the movie? Yes. The restroom scene with Oh Yeah, it was a very good scene. That is a scene that the old master would be proud of. A divine accident, as he would say. Was this nothing more than longtime friends of Orson Welles trying to help him recapture the magic of youth? Yes, these were all old friends. Some of them working for nothing. And Orson left us a clue of that. when we're talking about trying to recapture the magic of youth. Orson left us a clue in the scene with the leading man Max. The leading man Max scene. You're going to have to watch this movie carefully. If you're a student of filmography, you're going to have to watch it over and over just to catch some of the things that the old master is trying to say. Orson Welles was truly a genius. He knew better than anyone what he was creating. He had no illusions that this would be another Citizen Kane. No, he knew that he did not have the money, the budget, or the stars to make a great movie. He had no illusions of this. This, again, was a riddle, a puzzle. Orson Welles was trying to tell us something. And what strikes me the most about this pieced together montage was how Orson wanted to make it a riddle, a puzzle, for you to find the clues of how and what he really thought. What was he thinking? This was Orson Welles' last Hail Mary punch. Like I said, he was trying to laugh and poke needles into the money men of Hollywood. And the sad fact is that most viewers will miss this message entirely. Most viewers will have no idea what Orson Welles was thinking when he was putting this riddle and puzzle together. Oh, many people will claim it's a documentary of Orson's later years. But was it a documentary or a mockumentary? Yes. Was this nothing but a sleight of hand by the magician? He gave us many clues. He gave us many, many clues in this film footage as to what is really going on. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. In the leading man scene, Max. Max is the very handsome leading man. He came in there. They needed him in this movie. See, this is a movie within a movie. And the lead figure, the lead character, John Huston, is the director, and he needs a leading man. But guess what? Orson Welles also needed a leading man to carry his film. But he could not get the money to get that leading man. So these are the clues that Orson Welles puts in there. Another one in there, at the same scene with the leading man, Max, and he says, and the handsome actor says, Jake is just making this up as he goes along, isn't he? And that's another clue to Orson Welles. Orson Welles was giving us clues about what was going on here. His bitterness towards Hollywood executive money men expressed in so many lines in this movie through religion. Yes, there's lots of homophobic, religious stuff. It's all of it 1970s. I mean, it was normal in the 1970s. But Orson Welles had learned from Citizen Kane that you cannot buck these people because they'll they'll bury you. They broke him. They broke him, and he was bitter. Well, he wasn't all that bitter. I mean, he kept his creative juices going to the end. You cannot break him. You cannot break a genius like Orson Welles. He kept on fighting and fighting. But yes, he was trying to give us clues to what was going on in his head. The leading man, Max, not wanting to get involved, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor of the fact that Orson could not get the money to pay for a leading man to carry the movie. These are all a lot of metaphors in here. And in many ways, this might have been Orson Welles' way of addressing and exposing all of Hollywood's problems. Many scenes discuss things, the homo scenes, the money men scene, the sick parties. In fact, that is what this montage of vintage Americana footage is. Orson Welles trying to convey a secret message by way of sharp, pointy, rapid-cut editing needles into the sick veins of Hollywood. There are hidden messages here. Subtle as they are, Orson is trying to tell us something. Unfortunately, he was not able to edit this movie completely. Could you imagine how great this movie would have been if Orson Welles was able to edit the whole thing? It would have been a masterpiece. I have to assume it would have been a masterpiece because Orson Welles was trying to tell us something through metaphors and montage of clips. Obviously, there's no genius today on earth that could edit this the way Orson Welles would have. But we got what we got, and we must be happy and privileged that we're finally able to see just a glimpse of the last thoughts of the master magician, Orson Welles. And we must give him credit. We must give him a lot of credit for his cutting-edge, surreal restroom scene with the soaking wet Oya. Some people say it's reminiscent of Michelangelo and Tony Oni. But I think I'll go further than this. See, Orson Welles spent 20 years over in Europe. He was influeinfluenced by all those Italian 1960s Italian movies. And this is an important part too. We cannot, because this is one of the reasons why Orson could not get any money for this film. Think what he had. I mean, the only thing he really had to show people was this footage of Oya. And Orson was filming her with everything he learned in Europe. He was filming her as if he was an Italian. And people thought like Italians. We're not ashamed of the body. We're proud of the body. Huh. Can you imagine? This was thought of as pornography. Back in 1970s, trust me on this one, a lot of these kids won't even understand this. Back in the 1970s, this footage of Oya that you see was cut and dry pornography in the eyes of the American English-speaking people. The American English-speaking people, they don't think like the Mediterraneans and Italy. The Italians, again, are proud of the body. It's a beautiful body. And Orson Welles lived 20 years in this atmosphere. Orson Welles was not ashamed of her body. He filmed it like an Italiano would. And unfortunately, why is this such an important factor in the movie? Because nobody, no English people are going to give him any money for the movie. I mean, he got some movie from the Persians, but then all hell broke loose in Persia, and that dried up. So basically, he was either going to get money from the Mediterraneans or he wasn't going to get any money. And this is a very critical point to make, that this movie that he was creating was considered pornography in America. But in Europe, French, or Italy, it would be considered art. This is something that we cannot take away from the facts of the day. Those were the facts back then. We now know, after watching the movie, we now know why Oya Kohar got cold feet every time the film might have been able to be finished. Because many times they tried to finish it, and Oya got cold feet. She backed out. Many people think she was looking for more money. I think there was something else there. Yes, I think she was afraid that the work she and Orson did was not going to be great enough to stand up to the master's reputation. So I do believe that Oya was scared that, who in the hell was going to be able to edit this film as good as Orson Welles? Nobody. And she did not want herself or Orson to look bad. But finally, it's done. And, okay, before we get into the technical review part of the movie, what's missing? What would be in the movie? If Orson Welles was able to finish it, what's missing? What big part? I believe that missing part would have been Orson Welles himself. You see, Orson Welles was a magical figure, and just a few cameos by him would have lifted this movie up quite a bit by a few stars. Now, they insinuate that John Huston is the voyeur, the old man looking down on the young people. living his life vicariously through others. Remember this, when we watch movies, what are we doing? We are entertaining ourselves. We are living vicariously through the lives of these actors and these illusionists. That's the job of Orson Welles, to make our life a little bit better. And again, this is my opinion. I don't know if this was in Orson Welles' mind, but if he would have been some sort of mysterious caped figure who came in there and he was even above John Huston's character, because John Huston was the big man, but there are also other men behind the scenes, shadowy figures. And if Orson Welles could have been this mysterious, shadowy figure, and he was the voyeur, because in reality, that's what Orson was. Orson was the voyeur here. He was watching his naked girlfriend with younger men. Okay, I don't want to go too much farther into this, but is this one of the secrets that Orson is withholding from us? Is this part of the riddle? Is this part of the puzzle? You have to make your own mind up on that one. Now, at this point, I have to be honest with you. Everything you've heard from me, my commentary up to this point, is after I watched the movie twice. And of course, after watching it twice, you see other things, you start thinking other things. So these were my thoughts after watching it twice. Now, what you're about ready to hear are the thoughts, my original thoughts after I saw it the first time. So that'll be coming up pretty soon. And I will say this, at the 5-minute and 25 mark, there's a scene there where they have all the photojournalists there, and they're pointing out the photographers. And I'm not sure if that's Bo Derek. I'm almost thinking Bo Derek has a little cameo in this one. And she's the one that says, "I'm independent." They're calling out those girls are from Time Life magazine, blah blah blah. And then this pretty girl says, "I'm independent." I think that's Bo Derek. If anybody agrees with me, let me know on that one. And also at the party, when Dennis Hopper is at the party, there's also this picture of this young, pretty girl there. And I'm just curious, maybe there's some Hollywood insiders out there who know who that lady was. Maybe she was an actress. If you know who her name was, please leave a comment about who she was. I mean, because it's right on I think she looks very familiar. The only reason why I say is she looks very familiar. Here she is again. There. But the thing is, it's so quick. And I have a funny feeling that, she was probably an actress from the 70s. So here we go. We're going to go into my original thoughts after watching the movie the first time. I was going to make a review on it. And that's coming up right now. Orson Welles not only waged war with Hollywood, but more importantly, he waged war with himself. Now, Orson Welles wanted to create something new and exciting, filmography that had never been done before. That's what he was thinking. Now, he filmed most of this footage from 1970 to 1976, with many breaks in the filming because the money dried up, money coming from Iran. Now, the original idea for this film came to Orson Welles in 1961 after Ernest Hemingway committed suicide. So I guess the idea first dropped into his head in 1961. He did not start filming until 1970. And Welles was able to do some editing, I believe, in 1979. In the early 80s, he was able to do some editing before he died in 1985. Now, finally, in 2018, it was finished. There was many, many problems. I don't have time to go into all the problems with all the people who thought they owned it, and it was a nightmare. But finally, Netflix, I guess, came up with the money. It was finished, and it was shown at the 75th Venice International Film Festival on August of 2018. It was shown at the Venice International Film Festival. And it was just released by Netflix on November 2nd. Now, the actors
in this movie. They go way, way back, of course. A lot of them were dead. I mean, you had the legendary John Huston, Bob Random, Peter Bogdanovich, Oya Kodar, and my favorite in the movie is Paul Stewart. More on him later. Now, the best parts of the movie are, as Orson said, an old man's attempt to do a kind of counterculture film in a surrealistic, dreamlike style. And it's also my opinion that the one part, we'll get to the best part later, but I believe it is a divine accident. This is what Orson Welles used to talk about so often. He said, you just filmed and you filmed and you filmed, but to actually have a great part, to make a great movie, there has to be the divine accident. I believe there is one scene in this movie that you could classify as the divine accident. Unfortunately, Orson Welles would not live to see this movie in completion. But before we get to the review, remember this: Orson Welles was a magician. He used filmography, sleight of hand, to fool you into thinking and seeing something that was not really there. And that is the art of the rapidly cut, avant-garde editing style that he uses in part of this movie. Now, what would Orson Welles have thought? That's probably one of the biggest questions on my mind. You know, obviously he's not here, but what would Orson have thought of the final version? Well, if history could help us, if history holds the answer, well, the answer would be he would not think much of it. Now, I'm not taking away from the movie. The only reason why I want to say that is Orson Welles never approved of the final version of any of his movies that were basically taken over. He would shoot the footage. The Hollywood executives would take over the movie, and he never ever approved of the final version for any of the movies. So I have to go with history on this. That if the same thing happened, and that's what happened today in this movie, he did not get to actually complete it himself. It was completed by somebody else. And this is not taking away from the movie. I just think that Orson Welles would never approve of anything unless Orson Welles did it himself, and that's not possible. All right, maybe a quick correction in what we were talking about. Maybe there was one movie that Orson Welles approved of, and that would be his first movie, Citizen Kane. I think he had quite a bit of power on that movie. So I'm not 100% sure, but maybe he approved of that movie. But most of the movies he did not approve of. Now, on this film we're talking about today, he created almost 100 hours of footage. There was a whole lot of amazing footage there. There was a lot to work with. So that's why they were able to edit it and make a halfway decent movie. Again, if you're a student of filmography, if you want to understand how they're made, you're going to like this movie. If you're not a student, if you don't care about how they make movies, I don't think you're really going to like this movie. That's my opinion. And then in the introduction, explaining the movie, you've got Peter Bogdanovich, and he manages to throw in a few needles in there, and he says that he's old enough now not to care about what anybody might say about him. And of course, Orson did say a few things about him. So there was some friction going on there, and Peter sort of threw that in there in the introduction. Now, a metaphor. This movie is sort of a metaphor of the last 15 years of Orson Welles' filmmaking career. Of course, Orson Welles said many times he did not want people to look at it like that, but it's kind of hard to watch and not see the similarities between the film and the later years of Orson Welles. Now, It was also nice to see this guy in the movie, Paul Stewart. He plays Matt Costello. And now, Paul Stewart was in a great film noir movie. It was called Kiss Me Deadly back in 1955. So the man has a whole lot of experience. And he worked with Orson Welles quite a bit. And I must say, without Paul Stewart in this movie, the movie would have been lacking a lot. I mean, I hate to say it, but Paul Stewart really does help carry the movie. And he had the first great line in the movie. There's a bunch of photojournalists on the scene, and his character, Matt Costello, tells one of the photojournalists, he says, "Who let you in?" In only the way Paul Stewart could say it. Now, the second big moment in the movie is when John Huston enters the picture. And he's driving. They're driving in a vehicle. And in a show of times, remember this. We got to remember this is a time capsule from 1970s. And Houston's character says, "I need a drink." He's driving the car. He says, "I need a drink," and they hand him a drink while he's driving. And the cameraman is in the back, and the cameraman asks him to slow down so he doesn't fall out of the car. It's a convertible, and of course, Houston speeds up, and the guy almost falls out of the car. I mean, this is Orson Welles' way of describing the 60s and 70s, raw, rough, tough. I mean, drinking and driving and all that other stuff. So right from the get-go, I get the feel that Orson is trying to mix his 1940s film noir expertise in with the 1960s European filmography, that he experienced when he was over in Europe in the 60s, to create some kind of rapidly cut, avant-garde, surreal piece. But I also get the feeling early on that Welles doesn't want someone like me putting him in a box. I mean, he's really mixing it up in this movie. Now, the movie bounces back and forth, and I will say this. I think, it's my opinion, I think Peter Bogdanovich is a better producer than actor. But unfortunately, he had to take over for the Rich Little. Rich Little did that role, and Orson Welles did not think that Rich Little was that good of an actor either. So either way you get it, you get what you pay for. But the movie kind of bounces back and forth. And like I say, it's a movie within a movie, and you've got a lot of macho stuff going on in here. You got macho men slapping big mouth women. You got homophobic rhetoric, religious bashing old timers, naked women who don't talk. I mean, this is a movie that many deplorables would be proud to watch. So why do I say that? Because I cannot imagine anyone under 46 years old enjoying this movie, let alone understanding it. I would go so far to say that a movie like this, if Hillary Clinton were to watch this movie, that by the new year, 2019, Hillary would probably start a petition to have the movie banned as a pro-deplorable propaganda flick. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there from the 70s I don't think that the younger generation is going to appreciate. And sarcastically, I'm sure that the hashtag #MeToo movement will get a big kick out of this flashback time capsule, where they had all this wonderful 35 millimeter treasure trove, almost 100 hours of 35 millimeter footage, all from the 1970s, when women were women and men were men, and they acted like it. And that's what you get a feel of in this movie. Now, the third big moment is when this character here, Max, he's on the left there. The Max character asks, "Where is the script?" They're trying to get this big movie star to be in the movie. And he's saying, "I want to read the script. Where is it?" There's a long hesitation. He says, "There isn't one, is there? Jake is just making it up as he goes along." And the reason why I think this is the third big moment in the movie, because this is exactly how I think Orson Welles made this project. It went on for a long, long time. And he filmed it from 1970 to 76, and I do believe that he made it up as he went along, as he goes along. And that's a very telling part of the movie, and it's in the movie right there. And then, right around the 25-minute mark of the movie, Dennis Hopper makes an appearance. And it's nice to see a guy of Dennis Hopper's quality in this movie. I mean, it shows the power of Orson Welles to attract an eccentric type of genius that Dennis Hopper was. So he's in the movie. I look at this as the fourth big scene. But unfortunately, it's a really small, tiny part. Now, the fifth big line comes when the Matt Costello character walks in to the party. There he is. You know who that is. We talked about him before. That's Paul Stewart. Now, Paul Stewart walks into the party and he says, "Kill the music." Then he says, "Gypsies, jazz, and mariachis, all for a bunch of creeps who only want to listen to themselves talk." Jesus Christ. That was a line from Paul Stewart. I thought that was a good line. And by the 30-minute mark in the movie, most of the young snowflake viewers are going to have noticed the racist, deplorable religious shots directed towards Hollywood. I mean, all this 1970s stuff that's not politically correct today. And it makes me think about something. I'm getting a little controversial right now. They had almost 100 hours of footage. Can you imagine? This is 1970s. Can you imagine the beautiful dialogue that Orson filmed that the gatekeepers did not put in here? Think about it. Peter Bogdanovich, whatever the hell, I don't even know how to pronounce his name half the time. Peter is a gatekeeper. Can you imagine the beautiful, politically incorrect dialogue that went on here that they left out? That's the unfortunate times we live in today. That people are too tender. They can't take it. See, that was the beautiful thing back in the day when America was great. I mean, we weren't so thin-skinned. We could joke about ourselves. Think of Don Rickles. Now, I don't want to go off on a rant here, but think Don Rickles. I mean, we could laugh at ourselves. That's the problem with America today. People cannot laugh at themselves, and can you imagine the great stuff that was left out of this movie? Now, again, that's just my opinion. Settle down there, snowflake. Settle down. So by the 38-minute mark, I'm thinking to myself, is John Huston going to be able to carry this movie with all his nostalgia one-liners when the best scene of the movie enters? Pure 1960s, 70s, hippie, psychedelic genius from this master, Orson Welles. I mean, he really captured it. Like I had said before, it had to do with his years living in Italy, probably. But Orson captures the 1960s in this, oh yeah, restroom scene. Perfect. Yes, there's nudity. It's surreal. Filmography that would make the sex-crazed Italian directors proud. So don't miss that. It's right around the 38-minute mark to the 44-minute mark, proving that Orson learned something from his days over there in Europe in exile. He was in exile in Europe for 20 years. Now, the sixth big moment comes by about the 1 hour mark in the movie. You'll find out why nobody would give Orson any more money for the film. It was basically porno in the eyes. Like I think we talked about this before. This was porno in the eyes of 1970s old school money. Well, after that, it slows down a little bit. But then by the 1 hour and 20-minute mark, it picks up again with some good old-fashioned, down-to-earth, homophobic, racist Native American bashing going on. It's kind of scary. And then the next big moment, we'll call this big moment number 7, comes around about the 1 hour 38-minute mark. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it has to do with the dummies. Everybody's going to wonder what the hell those dummies are all about. And it's a moment that my old man and Hemingway would get a kick out of. So it's pretty big scene there. Some really classic stuff there going on. So in summary, like I said, the end dummy scene is brilliant,
And of course, the midgets on top of the roof. That's kind of funny. Is this Orson Welles' last laugh mocking Hollywood? Yes, it is. And of course, there's a classic ending. The classic ending to this 1970s time capsule in filmography is the drive-in scene there. So, perfect ending. Drive-in, ending at the drive-in. I mean, come on. That's what it was all about in the 1970s. Families going to the drive-in. So it really was a nice ending. Oh, how I miss the good old days.